Have you ever wondered what the most powerful people in history said right before the end? What final thoughts crossed the minds of emperors and conquerors who shaped our world? Today, we're journeying back in time to uncover the iconic and often surprising last words of 5 of history's most famous leaders. From ancient Rome to the vast Mongol Empire, these final phrases offer a fascinating glimpse into their lives, their legacies, and their very human last moments. Stick around, because some of these are not what you'd expect. Let's start with a name that echoes through history: Julius Caesar. Picture the scene: the Ides of March, 44 BC. Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, enters the Senate, unaware of the daggers hidden beneath the togas of his colleagues, men he considered friends. As they surround him, the first blow is struck. Caesar fights back, but then he sees him, Marcus Brutus, a man he had mentored, almost like a son. According to the historian Suetonius, Caesar's resistance crumbled. Looking at Brutus, he uttered his legendary last words in Greek, kai su, teknon, which translates to, "You too, my child." In that single heartbreaking question, you can feel the shock and betrayal. It wasn't the physical wounds that defeated him, but the emotional one. Shakespeare later dramatized this moment with the unforgettable line, "Et tu, Bruti." But that original phrase, "You too, my child," captures a far more personal and devastating sense of betrayal. It is a chilling reminder that even the mightiest can be brought down by those they trust the most. Next, we travel even further back to 323 BC, to the deathbed of Alexander the Great. At just 32 years old, he had conquered the known world, creating an empire that stretched from Greece to India. But a sudden, mysterious illness brought this legendary figure to his knees. As he lay dying in Babylon, his loyal generals, his Macedonians, gathered around him, desperate for a successor. They were the architects of his victories, and the future of this colossal empire rested on his final command. They asked him the most important question of all: to whom do you leave your empire? Alexander, weak and barely able to speak, reportedly whispered his final fateful words, toi kratistoi. In Greek, this means, to the strongest. Some historians wonder if he actually said, to Craterus, one of his most trusted generals, but the words were misheard. Either way, the result was chaos. To the strongest was an open invitation for war. His generals, men who had fought side by side, immediately turned on each other. The vast empire Alexander had built was torn apart in 50 years of brutal conflict known as the Wars of the Diadochi. His ambiguous last words didn't preserve his legacy. They shattered it, proving that even the greatest conqueror couldn't control what happened after he was gone. Now, let's return to Rome, to the man who succeeded where Caesar had failed, Augustus, the first Roman emperor. Unlike Caesar or Alexander, Augustus didn't meet a violent or sudden end. He died at the age of 75 after a long and prosperous reign known as the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. He had transformed a republic torn by civil war into a stable, powerful empire. As he lay on his deathbed in 14 AD, surrounded by his wife Livia and close associates, his final moments were not ones of regret or drama, but of reflection. He asked for a mirror, had his hair combed and his jaw set. Then, turning to his friends, he asked, "Have I played my part well in the comedy of life?" They assured him that he had. He then delivered his final line, "Then applaud as I exit." These words are so fitting for Augustus. He saw his life as a grand performance, and he was the lead actor. He had carefully crafted his public image, his political career, and even his death. He wasn't just an emperor, he was a master showman who understood the importance of a good finale. His death was as controlled and deliberate as his life, a final piece of political theatre from Rome's greatest statesman. Let's leap forward nearly 2 millennia to another self-made emperor, Napoleon Bonaparte. After his final defeat at Waterloo, Napoleon was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the middle of the Atlantic. His final years were spent in isolation, dictating his memoirs and reliving his past glories. He died in 1821, and the accounts of his last words paint a poignant picture of a man whose mind was still on the battlefield. In his final delirium, he reportedly muttered a series of fragmented phrases. The most commonly cited are France, l'armée, tête d'armée, Joséphine. France, the army, head of the army, Joséphine. These four things defined his entire existence. France, the country he loved and led. The army, his instrument of power and his family of soldiers. Head of the army, his own identity, his very essence as a commander. And finally, Joséphine, his first wife and the great love of his life, even though he had divorced her years earlier for political reasons. In his last breath, Napoleon wasn't thinking of his empire or his defeats, but of the core pillars of his life, his nation, his military career, and the woman he never stopped loving. It's a powerful and deeply human conclusion to a life lived on an epic scale. Finally, we ride onto the vast steppes of Asia to meet the founder of the largest contiguous empire in history, Genghis Khan. The end of his life, much like his beginning, is shrouded in mystery. He died in 1227 during a campaign against the Western Shia kingdom. The exact cause of his death is unknown. It could have been from injuries sustained after falling from his horse, illness, or something else entirely. But his last words, as recorded in historical chronicles, were not of personal reflection, but of relentless, strategic ambition. He knew his death could demoralize his army and give his enemies hope. So, he devised a final, brilliant, and ruthless plan. He commanded his sons to conceal his death completely until the Western Shia were utterly defeated. His orders were to pretend he was still alive and leading the charge. Speaking of his enemies, he reportedly said, "My life was too short to conquer the world. I have a last task for you, my sons. Our goal is to conquer the world by putting the whole world under one empire." Even on his deathbed, his mind was razor-sharp, focused on victory and the expansion of his empire. He wasn't just a warrior. He was a master strategist to the very end. His death was kept a secret, the campaign continued, and the Western Shia were annihilated, just as he had planned. His final command ensured that even in death, his will was unstoppable. From betrayal in the Roman Senate to a strategic command on the Mongolian plains, the last words of these great leaders are as diverse as the lives they led. They show us betrayal, ambition, love, and a profound sense of legacy. These final phrases are more than just historical trivia. They are the concluding sentences in the epic stories of their lives, giving us a final, intimate look at the men behind the legends. What do you think? Which leader's last words surprised you the most? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most fascinating moments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.